Adam, our dumb little weasel f***ing b***less dog, was summoned to his bad supervisor Harper Song's office because he had failed to complete a report. Harper looked absolutely furious as he repeatedly apologized, but she made it clear that she wanted an explanation rather than an apology. Adam admitted that he had simply forgotten to finish the report. Harper sternly pointed out that he was acting as if forgetting something was a valid excuse for not doing his job properly. She reminded him that he had already been working at the company for 4 months, yet he was still performing no better than an intern. She criticized him for making the same mistakes repeatedly and continued scolding him without holding back. While enduring her harsh lecture, Adam reflected on his unfortunate circumstances. Although he had graduated from a prestigious university with excellent grades, he had been unable to find a job for 2 years. Under constant pressure from his parents to accept any position available, he had eventually joined this company. He bitterly thought that it had simply been his bad luck. He had even turned down an interview with a much larger company just to accept this miserable job, and now he had no idea what he was supposed to do with his life. Harper eventually threw the report onto his desk, with a few pages striking him in the face, and ordered him to redo the entire report by Monday. Adam quietly acknowledged her instructions before leaving the office. After returning to his cubicle, he found one of his colleagues waiting for him. She immediately apologized and admitted that he probably would not have made those mistakes if he had not spent so much time helping her with her own workload a few days earlier. She sincerely expressed how guilty she felt about the situation. However, Adam silently disagreed with her apology. He thought that, if she truly felt sorry, she should have completed her own work properly in the first place. He had only helped her because he did not want both of them to get scolded due to her poor performance. In the end, he was the one who was being criticized for making mistakes in his own assignments as well. Despite his true feelings, Adam politely assured her that there was no need to apologize and insisted that he had not really helped her very much. She immediately denied that statement, insisting that he had been an enormous help. She explained that she had been in serious trouble that day and that Harper would certainly have reprimanded her if Adam had not stepped in to assist her. Since he was always willing to help whenever she needed it, she wanted to return the favor. She then shyly asked whether it would be all right if she treated him to dinner. Adam immediately stood up and declined her invitation, explaining that he already had plans. Although she looked slightly disappointed, she simply accepted his answer. After leaving the office, Adam walked home, while thinking that perhaps she had failed to understand the hint. He had no intention of encouraging her feelings or allowing her to take advantage of his kindness. As he stepped into the elevator, he received a message from Harper. Seeing her name on the screen instantly made him sigh. He reflected that it had already been a terrible day, and now even his carefully planned weekend seemed destined to become exhausting. During the weekend, Adam met Harper Song as planned. The moment they met, she immediately scolded him once again because he had arrived 5 minutes late. Adam silently complained that the delay had only been caused by the subway. Ignoring his excuse, Harper simply instructed him to follow her. The two of them first stopped to take several selfies together before entering a nearby cafe. While looking through the photos, Harper remarked that he should have smiled more warmly so they would actually look like a couple in love. Meanwhile, Adam quietly thought that none of those photographs could possibly be sent to his parents because they looked completely unnatural. As he reflected on his current situation, he realized how ridiculous everything had become. He was now pretending to be in a fake relationship with his own supervisor, and it had all started because his parents constantly pressured him to find a girlfriend after he finally secured a job. He remembered telling his friends in their group chat that he had finally found employment. Shortly afterward, his parents had immediately begun urging him to start dating. One of his friends then suggested introducing him to a woman who happened to be facing exactly the same problem. She also needed someone to pretend to be her boyfriend in order to satisfy her parents. Thinking it sounded like a practical solution, Adam agreed to meet her. The following day, he arrived at the cafe for their first meeting, only to discover that the woman was none other than Harper Song. As they sat across from each other, Adam silently regretted not asking for a photograph beforehand. Harper also looked noticeably embarrassed and admitted that she had run out of people she could ask for such a favor. Adam privately assumed that her demanding personality was probably the reason no man wanted to date her. At the same time, he worried that his parents would surely question him about whether he had managed to arrange a second date. Harper then directly asked whether he would be willing to become her fake boyfriend. She explained that all she needed was for him to play the role convincingly. Since both of them were only trying to satisfy their parents, there was no reason to treat the relationship as anything more than an arrangement. She wanted to focus entirely on her career, but her parents constantly interfered by pressuring her to date. Therefore, they only needed to meet occasionally, take a few convincing photographs together, and send them to their parents as proof that they were happily dating. Since the relationship was fake from the beginning, neither of them would have to worry about breakups or any emotional complications. After explaining everything, she asked for Adam's opinion. Adam considered her proposal carefully. Although he found her personality rather intimidating, he admitted that she was undeniably beautiful and incredibly capable, having already become a team leader at such a young age. His parents would undoubtedly approve of someone like her. Personally, he knew he would never date her seriously, but pretending to be her boyfriend seemed manageable. Therefore, he agreed and told her that the arrangement sounded acceptable. Back in the present, Adam returned to the office, where Harper was already waiting for him. Looking at him, she commented that it was a pleasure to see him looking so energetic, and said that, since he appeared ready to work, she would not go easy on him. Adam silently thought that his exhaustion was entirely her fault. He immediately apologized, but Harper ignored it and instead asked whether he had finished correcting the report she had assigned him the previous Friday. Adam quickly replied that he would retrieve it immediately before hurrying back to his cubicle. As he searched through the files on his computer, he reflected on how exhausting it was to return to work without having been able to rest during the weekend. He had originally believed that the fake relationship would simply require them to meet occasionally and take a few photographs together. Instead, Harper had insisted that he carefully plan entire dates so that their stories, schedules, photographs, and social media updates would all match perfectly. Every plan he created was torn apart by her endless criticism. If his ideas were truly that terrible, he thought she could have simply planned everything herself. Instead, he had been forced to listen to her endless complaints throughout the entire weekend. Had he known the arrangement would become this demanding, he never would have agreed in the first place. While searching for the completed report on his computer, another employee approached his desk. Adam politely asked whether she needed something. She noticed that he looked unusually exhausted and commented that he seemed to be having a terrible day. She kindly told him that she would be happy to treat him to a meal if he wanted some company. To her surprise, Adam immediately accepted her offer. She looked slightly startled before asking whether there was anywhere in particular he wanted to eat. Adam replied that he was craving sushi and wondered if she knew any good sushi restaurants near the office. As they prepared to leave together, Adam reflected that her name was Dana Jin. By the following day, the two of them would unexpectedly end up at a motel to participate in a boxing round. The next morning, Adam arrived at the office looking noticeably exhausted. As he slowly settled into his seat, he could not help reflecting on everything that had happened after work. He never would have imagined that he would actually go through with the sparring session alongside Dana the previous evening. Before they had parted ways, he had repeatedly asked her not to tell any of their coworkers or even any of her friends about what had happened. Much to his surprise, Dana had agreed without questioning him or teasing him about it, promising that she would keep everything completely confidential. Thinking about it now, Adam quietly admitted to himself that he had never expected her to agree so easily to his request. As he sat at his desk trying to organize his thoughts, Dana happened to be sitting right beside him. Every few moments, he could feel her glancing in his direction. Whenever he accidentally looked up, he found her already looking at him, which only made him feel increasingly embarrassed. He immediately looked away each time, pretending to focus on his work, but it only made the awkwardness worse. Noticing his uncomfortable expression, Dana leaned slightly closer and quietly commented that it did not seem like anyone at the office had started teasing them yet. Her tone was light-hearted, but Adam felt even more embarrassed after hearing her remark. Rather than replying, he immediately stood up from his chair and awkwardly announced that he was going outside to get some fresh air. As he walked through the office, he silently reflected that he had honestly believed everything had ended after the previous night's training session. Instead, the situation had somehow become even more irritating. He simply could not understand why he had to keep dealing with Dana again, when he was already mentally and physically exhausted because of everything that had happened between them the night before. After sitting alone for a short while in an attempt to clear his mind, Harper Song suddenly approached him. Looking at him with her usual strict expression, she sarcastically remarked that he seemed to have plenty of free time on his hands since he still had not submitted the report she had asked him to complete. As she looked at him more carefully, she immediately noticed how tired he appeared. She then asked why he looked so exhausted. Adam honestly admitted that he had been unable to sleep at all the previous night. Harper responded without showing any sympathy. She told him that this was exactly why he needed to finish all of his work during office hours instead of allowing it to pile up. She then asked whether he was seriously planning to spend another entire night working. Adam simply apologized without offering any further explanation. At the same time, he silently thought that staying awake the previous night had absolutely nothing to do with work. Without wasting any time, Harper suddenly changed the subject and asked whether he had already finished preparing the itinerary for their next date. The question caught Adam completely off guard. He immediately thought that he had not even begun planning it yet. It was only Tuesday, and he genuinely could not understand why she was already asking about a date that was not scheduled until Saturday. Even though he was completely unprepared, he politely assured her that he would start planning everything later that day. Deep inside, however, he was thinking that after spending an entire night without sleep, all he wanted was to stay home and finally get some proper rest during the upcoming weekend. To his surprise, Harper calmly replied that there was still plenty of time before the weekend arrived. She even mentioned that she had already found a nice restaurant near the place they were planning to visit and thought it would fit perfectly into their schedule. After hesitating for a moment, Adam carefully asked whether it would be possible to postpone their date to another day. Harper looked at him with a puzzled expression, clearly surprised by the unexpected request. The moment he saw her reaction, Adam immediately assumed that she was going to refuse. However, contrary to his expectations, Harper simply nodded and agreed without arguing. She then handed him a bottled drink before calmly explaining that she was not nearly as unreasonable or selfish as he seemed to believe. She assured him that she would never force someone to go on a date against their own wishes. She admitted that she had criticized his previous date plans only because they had honestly been poorly organized. She then told him that he simply needed to let her know whenever he became free again. Before walking away, she gently reminded him to take better care of himself. Adam watched her leave while silently wondering whether she had suddenly decided to pretend to be kind. Her unexpected response was so different from her usual attitude that he found it difficult to believe. By the time the workday finally came to an end, Adam packed up his belongings and prepared to head home. As he walked toward the elevator, he reflected that this would be the very first weekend he would actually be able to rest ever since he and Harper had begun their fake relationship. Ever since agreeing to their arrangement, he had spent almost every weekend going out with her. Not only had he been forced to accompany her on countless fake dates, but he had also been responsible for planning every single outing. Constantly coming up with convincing date courses had become an exhausting task, leaving him mentally drained week after week. Just as the elevator doors opened, Dana Jin stepped inside and ended up standing beside him. Adam looked at her and politely asked whether she needed something. Dana smiled before asking whether he happened to be free that weekend. The moment he heard her question, Adam immediately thought to himself that, no matter what happened, he absolutely refused to leave his house during the upcoming weekend. All he wanted was to stay home, sleep for as long as possible, and recover from the exhausting week he had just endured. Before he could answer, Dana explained that she was asking because they had not been able to have dinner together after their training session the previous evening. Meanwhile, Adam quietly remembered that he still had to prepare the itinerary for his next fake date with Harper, making the thought of another outing feel even more exhausting. Dana then cheerfully told him that she already had a wonderful restaurant in mind and would love to take him there. After thinking about it for a few moments, Adam replied that he would consider accepting the invitation, but only if she was the one responsible for planning everything. Dana looked genuinely surprised by his response before letting out a small laugh. She commented that she found it amusing that he was still referring to their outing as a date, adding that she actually liked hearing him call it that. Feeling slightly embarrassed by her reaction, Adam simply replied that he would do his best. Finally, the weekend arrived. Adam stood alone on a quiet street, patiently waiting for Dana at their agreed meeting place. Although he had originally planned to spend the weekend resting at home, things had somehow turned out differently once again. A short while later, Dana finally appeared. She was dressed in a beautiful outfit that suited her perfectly, making her look much more elegant than she usually did at the office. The moment she spotted Adam already waiting there, she looked slightly surprised and somewhat confused. Walking over to him with an apologetic smile, she asked whether he had been waiting for her for a very long time. Dana showed up wearing a beautiful outfit, and as soon as he saw her, he quietly took her hand before following her wherever she was leading him. She reminded him that the movie was about to start, while he silently found himself thinking that he had always believed a girl would naturally be much better at planning a date than he ever could. However, he had already begun having doubts the moment she had chosen that particular type of movie. In his opinion, they would simply end up wasting their time because they would not even be able to take any memorable pictures together. He could already imagine Harper giving him an earful if she ever found out that he had spent his time on such a date without bringing back any photographs. His thoughts then drifted toward Dana's appearance. Before meeting her, he had honestly expected her to dress the same way she normally did whenever she came to work, so seeing her wearing such a different outfit had completely caught him off guard. The clothes she had chosen looked far more fashionable and elegant than he had anticipated. A little later, after she came out of the public changing room wearing another outfit, she walked over to him and asked for his opinion about how she looked. After looking at her carefully for a moment, he admitted that she looked much better now than before. His answer immediately made her feel pleased, and the satisfied expression on her face showed that his compliment had left quite an impression on her. After that, the two of them continued spending time together, while he quietly reflected that he really had no one else to blame except himself. He thought that he should never have expected something more polished or romantic from someone who had absolutely no dating experience. The entire situation felt rather awkward and strange to him, but instead of complaining about it, he decided that the best thing he could do was simply humor her a little, go along with whatever happened, and let the date come to an end naturally. After walking around together for a while, he pointed out that they had already missed the movie and wondered what they should do next. Hearing that, Dana immediately asked whether he already had another destination in mind. He answered that it was not supposed to be his responsibility to plan the date because she had been the one arranging everything from the beginning. She then explained that she no longer thought he would actually enjoy following the plan she had originally prepared. Instead, she said that she would much rather take him somewhere that he himself would enjoy, so that the rest of the date would be more comfortable for him. Her response surprised him for a brief moment because he had not expected her to consider his feelings that much. As he thought about what she had just said, he suddenly remembered that she had mentioned a particular restaurant earlier. Realizing that it had probably been the place she had wanted to visit all along, he asked whether she would like to go there and have something to eat instead. She agreed, and before long, the two of them found themselves sitting together inside the restaurant. Dana looked genuinely happy as she enjoyed the meal, and while eating, she enthusiastically explained that she had always wanted to try the food served there, but had never been able to because the restaurant did not accept customers who came alone. She continued explaining that although many restaurants charge similar prices, most of them served frozen meat instead of fresh meat. However, that restaurant always prepared fresh meat for its customers, and even the side dishes were carefully selected to match the quality of the main course. Listening to her speak so passionately about the food, he quietly observed that she could probably have eaten enough for 2 people by herself. Even so, after finishing so much meat, he assumed that she was finally feeling full. A little later, she picked up her milkshake and, while holding it in her hand, asked whether he wanted to taste it. He politely declined her offer, but instead of putting the drink down, she happily continued talking about it. She explained that it was the shop's special seasonal drink that was only available for a limited period and that customers could only enjoy it while the promotion lasted. After that, she enthusiastically began introducing him to the other seasonal drinks the shop offered, describing each one with obvious excitement. As he listened to her, he quietly reflected that spending money on a nice meal like this was actually much more worthwhile than constantly worrying about complicated date plans. He concluded that for their future dates, he no longer needed to stress over finding exciting places to visit or interesting activities to do. Simply choosing a good restaurant where they could sit together, enjoy delicious food, and spend time talking would already be enough. He also realized that dates like these would allow him to return home much earlier without exhausting himself. Once they had both finished their drinks, he suggested that it was probably time for them to head home. Dana looked genuinely surprised by his suggestion and asked whether it was not still too early for them to end the date and go back. Rather than returning immediately, she proposed that the two of them should do their close combat battle together instead. As a result, the two of them eventually returned to the motel once again, where they began sparring together. The next morning at the office, he walked into Harper Song's office with the completed report in his hands. After finishing her review, she looked up at him and calmly remarked that this was exactly the kind of report he should have submitted from the very beginning. She told him that the quality of the report was finally acceptable and instructed him to go ahead and submit it officially. Hearing those words, he simply acknowledged her instructions, replied that he understood, and then left her office to complete the submission. As he walked back toward his own cabin, he could not help feeling relieved that the meeting had ended so peacefully. When he returned to his cabin, Dana smiled before commenting that it was probably the very first time Harper had approved his work without getting angry or scolding him. She found the situation rather surprising because Harper usually pointed out every small mistake before allowing him to leave her office. Hearing Dana's observation, he smiled slightly and jokingly replied that it was probably because she no longer needed him to spend so much time helping her with her own work. Since she had become capable of handling everything by herself, he had finally been able to devote all of his attention to his own assignments instead. Dana immediately shook her head and insisted that his explanation was completely wrong. She explained that none of that would have been possible if he had not patiently taught her everything she needed to know. According to her, she had only been able to complete her work independently because he had guided her step by step until she understood every part of the job. He told her that he had only shown her the basics and explained the workflow, while she had been the one who had learned everything so quickly. He admitted that he had honestly never expected her to improve at such an incredible pace, nor had he imagined that she would become capable of working completely on her own within such a short period of time. After their conversation ended, he quietly reflected on everything that had happened over the past few weeks. He realized that he was genuinely surprised by how much things had changed. Looking back, he thought that perhaps he should have trusted Dana from the very beginning instead of assuming she would continue depending on him. Now that she was handling her own responsibilities without needing constant guidance, he had finally been able to focus entirely on his own work. Because of that, he had completed his assignments without making careless mistakes, and for the first time in a long while, he had managed to avoid another harsh lecture from Harper. Feeling genuinely happy about the improvement, Dana cheerfully suggested that the two of them should celebrate the occasion by going out for dinner that evening. However, he apologized and explained that he would not be able to join her because he already had another appointment scheduled for later that day. Although Dana looked slightly disappointed, she accepted his explanation without arguing any further. Not long afterward, his phone suddenly vibrated with a new message. When he checked it, he saw that Harper had asked him to come downstairs. Without wasting any time, he left the office building and met her outside. Soon afterward, the two of them headed to a restaurant together. After they had settled down and their meal had been served, he casually mentioned that he had actually thought having dinner together during the week had been a pretty good idea. Harper calmly agreed, saying that the arrangement was not bad at all because it allowed them to meet on weekdays while leaving both of them free to rest during the weekends. She added that it was a practical schedule and suggested that they should consider doing something similar again from time to time. Hearing her say that made him quietly wonder whether this would be a good opportunity to ask if she wanted to go somewhere different for their next date instead of always following the original plan. Before he could gather enough courage to ask, Harper looked at him and casually asked whether that was the end of the itinerary he had prepared for the evening. He honestly admitted that it was. Rather than criticizing him for the lack of planning, she simply smiled and said that there was somewhere she wanted to visit before going home. She asked him to follow her, and without asking any questions, he quietly accompanied her. After leaving the restaurant, the two of them eventually arrived at a crockery store. As soon as they stepped inside, Harper called him over and asked him to come closer. Watching her examine the shelves filled with cups, plates, and other kitchenware, he quietly assumed that she had probably come there to buy herself a mug. Instead, she began showing him several different cups and asked for his opinion on which one looked better. He carefully looked at each design, but to him, most of them appeared almost identical. Even so, he did his best to compare them before finally choosing one that seemed slightly nicer than the others. After hearing his opinion, Harper smiled before picking up not one but two matching cups and taking them to the cashier. Watching her purchase both of them left him feeling rather confused, and he silently wondered why she had decided to buy two identical cups instead of just one. His confusion disappeared a few moments later when Harper handed one of the neatly wrapped packages directly to him. She calmly explained that she had already known he would not remember the date himself, so she had prepared a small gift for the third month of their relationship. She reminded him that although their relationship only existed for appearances and was completely fake, she still thought matching cups were an appropriate gift, because they were practical and meaningful enough for the occasion. Receiving such an unexpected present left him genuinely surprised. He sincerely thanked her and admitted that he truly appreciated both the gift and the thought she had put into preparing it. Harper then lightly teased him by saying that he should at least save important dates in his calendar application, because he was unbelievably clueless whenever it came to remembering anniversaries or similar occasions. Her words made him suddenly realize that 3 entire months had already passed without him even noticing. He silently blamed himself for never once thinking about celebrating their monthly anniversary or preparing any kind of gift in return. Still curious, he asked whether she had chosen those particular cups for any specific reason. Harper casually replied that there was no hidden meaning behind the choice. She simply thought they were practical enough to be used every day while also looking nice enough to display. Satisfied with her explanation, he replied that he had only been curious. Harper then pointed out something she had recently noticed about him. She mentioned that he used to answer almost everything she said, with nothing more than a simple okay. Recently, however, he had started asking about the things she liked, the restaurants she preferred, and many of her personal preferences. She teasingly remarked that it almost seemed as though someone had advised him to start paying more attention to those details. Hearing her observation completely caught him off guard because she had accurately noticed the recent change in his behavior. Before he could even think of an explanation, Harper unexpectedly asked whether he had found another girl. The sudden question completely stunned him, leaving him speechless for several seconds. Just as he was about to answer, one of the store employees politely approached them and informed them that it was closing time. With no opportunity to continue the conversation, the two of them quietly left the store together. As they walked outside, he could not stop thinking about Harper's question. He silently regretted allowing the perfect opportunity to slip away. He felt that her question had completely caught him by surprise, and that he should have responded immediately, instead of standing there without saying anything. While he was still thinking about it, Harper suddenly asked whether he would like to grab a drink before heading home. Although he hesitated for a brief moment, he eventually accepted her invitation. A short while later, the two of them were sitting together inside a bar. Looking around the bar, he admitted that he had honestly never expected Harper to invite him out for drinks. Harper calmly replied that there was nothing wrong with occasionally relaxing after work. He then mentioned that during every company dinner she rarely drank any alcohol, so he had always assumed that she simply was not interested in drinking. Harper admitted that his assumption had been correct. She explained that she normally drank very little, but tonight she was drinking considerably more than usual because she was still waiting for him to answer the question she had asked inside the crockery store. Hearing that, he finally decided to answer honestly. The more time they spent together, the more he realized how little he actually knew about her. That realization had made him feel uncomfortable because he believed he should at least know her favorite foods, restaurants, hobbies, and personal preferences. Harper quietly listened to his explanation before asking whether he had really needed so much time just to say something that simple. She then smiled faintly and told him that if he ever found himself a real girlfriend, he would have to let her know immediately because their fake relationship would naturally come to an end at that point. She explained that he had only agreed to pretend to be her boyfriend because she had requested it, so it would only be fair to end the arrangement once he entered a genuine relationship. She then teasingly asked whether he had actually been planning to date another woman while continuing to pretend to be her boyfriend at the same time. He immediately denied such an idea, explaining that something like that had honestly never even crossed his mind. After calming down, he asked whether she herself had any intention of finding a real boyfriend. Harper quietly shook her head and replied that she had no plans to do that anytime soon. She admitted that this was exactly why she had entered into a fake relationship with him in the first place. As the drinks continued, Harper gradually began talking more openly about her personal life than ever before. She confessed that ever since her older brother had gotten married, her parents had constantly been asking when she planned to get married as well, and when she intended to give them grandchildren. She admitted that those endless questions had become extremely frustrating because everyone acted as though marriage and raising children were simple things. She confessed that she could barely manage her own daily life, so the idea of taking care of children felt completely overwhelming to her. Thinking about those constant expectations only made her feel irritated and embarrassed. As he quietly listened to everything she revealed, he realized that this was the very first time she had ever spoken so honestly about herself during one of their dates. After sharing her own thoughts, Harper shifted the conversation toward him and began asking questions about his personal life instead. At first, he believed there was nothing particularly interesting about himself to talk about. However, after thinking quietly for a moment, he finally decided to open up. He reminded her that she had been the one who said they should learn more about each other's preferences, so he supposed it was finally his turn to start telling her whatever she wanted to know about him. Meanwhile, back at the home, Dana continued sending him message after message regarding the work report. The more time passed without hearing from him, the more desperate she became to meet him again, and throughout the entire evening, he remained constantly on her mind. The next morning, Adam arrived at the office as usual. After entering the building, he greeted Harper before quietly making his way to his cabin. As he settled into his seat and looked in Harper's direction, he could not help observing that she did not look tired in the slightest. Considering how much she had drunk the previous night, he had expected her to appear exhausted or at least somewhat affected by it. Instead, she looked as composed, energetic, and professional as ever, as though nothing unusual had happened the night before. Her calm demeanor left him genuinely surprised. Watching her work so normally caused him to recall every conversation they had shared during their time together the previous evening. His mind replayed those memories one after another, and he found himself thinking that he had always believed Harper was an extremely persistent person who enjoyed getting on other people's nerves whenever she had the opportunity. However, after spending time with her outside of work, he realized that she was not nearly as unbearable or intimidating as he had always imagined. Although she could still be strict and demanding in the office, there seemed to be another side of her that he had never noticed before. While he was still lost in those thoughts, Dana suddenly walked into his cabin once again. The moment he noticed her, he pointed out that she was late. Dana immediately apologized before explaining that she had stayed up watching a movie before going to bed the previous night. She enthusiastically began telling him that it had been a multiverse movie produced by a company that was well known for creating disturbing independent films. She continued describing the plot, the strange scenes, the characters, and all the unusual concepts that had appeared throughout the movie, speaking with obvious excitement as though she wanted him to share her interest. Throughout her explanation, Adam simply listened with a calm expression, appearing completely unbothered and showing very little reaction to any of the details she was excitedly mentioning. Before Dana could continue talking any further, Harper interrupted both of them from nearby. She reminded them that the office was not the place for casual conversations and instructed them to stop chatting during working hours. She then assigned them a task, telling both Adam and Dana to go to the supply room and carefully check all of the office supplies. Without arguing, both of them agreed to her instructions and immediately headed toward the supply room together. After arriving there, Adam began inspecting the shelves and carefully writing down every item that was stored inside, while keeping track of the inventory. Dana remained beside him as he worked. After quietly watching him for a while, she casually asked whether he had been busy the previous night. Adam paused for a moment before replying that it sounded as though she actually had something she wanted to ask. He remarked that she seemed to have something on her mind and encouraged her to simply say whatever she wanted instead of beating around the bush. Dana admitted that she had only been wondering whether he had done anything special after work,